Welcome back to Rants and Reels. Tonight, I am going to see Venom. I have concerns. First and foremost, big questions in my mind. Can Venom work without Spider-Man? Does Venom even make sense without Spider-Man? The character strong enough out of the gate for a standalone film? So those are big questions in my mind just about the concept. There's a lot of things swirling around this film. It was difficult for them to get it off the ground. We've heard stories of production trouble. And a big, I don't know if I could really fairly call it a red flag, but certainly a warning sign, at least among critics. Today is Wednesday. The film opens Friday. It does a soft open Thursday, tomorrow night. So we have 24 hours or less to turn reviews around and get them out. That is rarely a good sign. Now, occasionally it can be. Notably, the last one that kind of comes to mind was Star Wars, the Force Awakens. They did a very close to open screening, and it was kind of last minute. The kind of thing that might, throw up warning signs. And it did. It kind of alarmed us when that happened. It's like, oh no, what's the studio trying to hide? And that's, usually what that signifies, that they're trying to bury reviews. Not always. Sometimes it's just scheduling. Sometimes it's just a rushed production. Sometimes it's the schedule surrounding with other films, if it's a crowded opening weekend. This is not a crowded opening weekend. So, again, I'm trying to remain, I'm going to keep my mind open here. I'm really kind of hoping for something that's fun. Maybe campy. Campy's good. I like campy. So maybe that's, I don't know. I really honestly have no idea what to expect. But I do have reservations and questions going in. So here's hoping for a pleasant surprise. And I'll be right back, and I'll let you know. I'll let you know whether it's a pleasant surprise or not. I've just come from the theater after watching Venom. So I went in with some questions. Could it work without Spider-Man, and does it make sense without Spider-Man? And yes, they did manage to make it work without Spider-Man, and it did make sense. So, as far as the character of Venom goes. Now that said, I still feel like this film was only partially successful. Maybe about 50% successful. And that successful 50%, I think, was mostly accidental. They kind of stumbled, I think. It seems, into a campy comic book, semi-dark comedy. There are bits and pieces that are definitely supposed to be funny. Definitely comic elements in there. But I don't think they were... I don't think the punchline was funny, but yeah, I don't... It's kind of hard to explain. Funny because it was ridiculous, not because it was a humorous joke or witty, anything like that. Interactions between Eddie Brock and Venom, that was funny. I don't know if it was necessarily supposed to be funny. What comes to mind as a recent example is a Victor Frankenstein. Not a great movie. Campy and fun, but not great. That's kind of what Venom was, except the first almost half, not quite, like the first 45 minutes, really could have been cut down to like 10. I feel like they needed a second run at editing this film. You know, shorten that first 45 minutes. Make Act 1 less. We didn't need that much exposition to set everything up. There was too much, and it wound up being 90% irrelevant. We needed a few details here and there, and we could have gone with it. Act 2, that's kind of where it became campy and fun. A little bit. I mean, it was still pretty messy. And, Act 3 was just... Act 3 really kind of felt like they didn't really have a clear idea how they were supposed to or could end the movie. So they just ended it. I mean, not that the ending didn't make sense, but it was a little, especially for a campy comic book movie, it was a little too contrived. So, I mean, it was a mess. The whole movie was really a mess. But it was not a complete disaster. It's not something that's going to have a huge mass appeal, but I think it's gonna be okay. It'll do okay, depending on how much money Sony sunk into this. I'm afraid they may have sunk too much into it for it to be a very successful, like they clearly want it to. They clearly want this to be set up either as a mini, self-contained franchise, or possibly what I suspect. Well, not just me. A lot of people suspect that they probably want to offload this or sell it to Marvel. That would be my suspicion. That'd be what I guess. But I don't really know if this is what the universe they created. I don't know if that's something that would fit with the current Marvel Studios model. But that's okay. Not everything needs to fit. We don't need carbon copies of everything. This was, I believe, originally supposed to. They had it originally slated as an R-rated film. Kind of glad they didn't do that, although it doesn't sound like they made that decision in the best possible way. Because I believe they made that decision after production was complete. So they cut it from an R to a PG-13 in the editing room, and that doesn't always work. In fact, it probably rarely works. Unless it was a very soft R rating to begin with, but I didn't get the impression that this was. But I don't honestly know that it would have really worked quite as well as an R-rated film. I would have to see that cut to really be able to tell. Maybe it's better. Maybe it's not. So this is really kind of a toss-up. Half of it is, I wouldn't say good. I would say it's watchable. You can watch it. You can laugh at it. A good part of the laughing is not necessarily laughing with the film, but laughing at the film, which has its merits. It certainly does. I'm pretty sure I'll wind up watching this again and chuckling, and I'm sure I'm going to have some good laughs talking about this with friends of mine once they see it. So it could be a fun. It could be a surprise hit. Not for the reasons I think the studio wants it to be, but really the studio doesn't care as long as people go see it. So, if you are hoping for a Venom film that is extra violent or dark, you're not really going to get it here. If you're looking for something that's kind of is a bit of a reflection, at least in spirit, to a comic book, I think somewhat unintentionally, but still somewhat reminiscent of a comic book, especially kind of a 90s comic book. This really felt a little dated. It's a brand new film, and it felt a little dated, which is odd, I guess. It's probably that these concepts or ideas, stories, have been around for a while now. They've been circulating at least since Spider-Man 3, the Sam Raimi Spider-Mans. So, been around for a while, and I'm sure it's gone through revisions, but I think there's some of those original elements there, and certainly the spirit, I suppose. But all in all, I'm not mad. I'm not mad at it. It was okay. This is really just kind of a middle of the road. As far as being enjoyable, from a technical aspect, it was messy. The editing was kind of crap. The effects were goofy and unpolished, really. I think a lot of things were left on the floor, and it may have been some of the best stuff. Probably. I think the film itself was saved entirely by Tom Hardy. That's without him or his influence, the way he created and personified those characters, both of them. He did both Eddie Brock and Venom. Without that, it wouldn't have worked at all. So he definitely, if there was anything, any redeeming qualities, anything to be saved, it's on his shoulders. So congratulations, Tom Hardy. You kept the film from being a disaster and made it okay. So that's Venom. An okay film. Most partly halfway.